Right, we're back. We're talking some Final Fantasy VII. We're talking some Remake. We're talking some Rebirth. We have sort of some updates in regards to 7 Remake, 7 Rebirth, and I guess also Final Fantasy 16 and Xbox. They're coming from NateTheHate. He's already kind of said this stuff before, like a few months ago, right? We did a video about it. I think it's the first video we did involving NateTheHate, actually. Talking about, Remake and Rebirth coming to Xbox eventually in 16 as well. He does also give a very, very minor update in regards to whether or not Remake Part 3 would be PlayStation exclusive. It's nothing major. Let's not get too excited. But it's probably worth mentioning, I suppose. Also does very briefly touch on the Final Fantasy IX Remake, which I guess is also worth discussing. Another aspect of the video we looked at back in January was him making the claim that 7 Remake and 7 Rebirth will also come to Switch 2 eventually, and we know that now to be true, of course.
Will also be coming to Nintendo Switch 2.
Nintendo Switch 2で Final Fantasy VII Remake インターグレードを発売いたします。
I will say, though, that's not necessarily like a bold claim or groundbreaking piece of information, because I think most people pretty much assumed that it would come to Switch 2 eventually, if it wasn't going to come to Switch 1. Kind of like the Xbox conversation, I think most people are aware of the fact, unless you're like a really weird like anti-Xbox person or like Sony fanboy or something, are aware of the fact that like the remake games and obviously 16 are going to come to Xbox eventually. As has, pretty much every single Final Fantasy game outside of the 7 Remake stuff we have so far, and obviously Final Fantasy 16. Actually, as of right now, if you look at like modern PlayStation, like PS5, and I guess technically PS4, and like modern Xbox, they're tied for Final Fantasy games, right? Because we don't have 7 Remake, 7 Rebirth, and 16 on Xbox, but Xbox, of course, has the 13 trilogy, so they should be even roughly. I say roughly just because I don't know if there's like some obscure Final Fantasy game that's maybe on PlayStation that isn't on Xbox. There's a ton of Final Fantasy games out there. The updates we have from NateTheHate are him further confirming that Remake is coming to Xbox this year, also 16, and that Rebirth is coming to Xbox next year. So this person says, with today's news, is the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy still coming to Xbox? To which he replies, Remake is this year, Rebirth is next year. Just waiting on Microsoft/Square Enix to announce it. Right there is not necessarily anything new. That's pretty much what he said back in January, that, Remake would be coming to Xbox this year, Rebirth coming to Xbox next year, right? He does say with that tweet that we're just kind of waiting on Microsoft or Square Enix to announce it, right? Which is obviously very true. Back in January, though, he did have a prediction that they were going to announce it then, specifically at the Xbox Developer Direct, which happened on January 23rd.
I think following the announcement of Final Fantasy XVI, we will see Square Enix confirm that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will be coming to Xbox. My speculation is that this announcement will take place at the Developer Direct. I want to make that part clear.
Now, this was his prediction, not his claim that it was going to happen, right? This wasn't, I got to clarify that for some people. He wasn't saying that was going to happen. It was his personal prediction that might happen. But it didn't. And I did talk about that in my video, that it didn't make any sense anyways, because January 23rd was the day that Rebirth was coming to PC. It'd be kind of weird to like announce same day that it's launching on PC. Also, this is coming to Xbox next year. I would say with a bit of hindsight, though, there could have been something there with like Game Pass, obviously, because Game Pass on PC, like, you maybe could have done an announcement same day of, eventually Rebirth is also coming to Xbox, which means it'll be on Game Pass, which means you can do Game Pass on PC. There's something there, right, of course. But clearly that did not happen. So this person also tweeted at Nate saying, is Final Fantasy 16 and 7 Remake still coming to Xbox? Weird Switch 2 is getting the remake, but still nothing said on the Xbox version, which he simply says, still Xbox bound. So that's kind of the Final Fantasy 16 update. It's nothing major. It just says Xbox bound, right? We don't really have like a window of time for either of these games. We're, I guess, still just waiting on either Microsoft or Square Enix to announce 16. That one's a for sure, though, right? Like there's no debate on that one. Like, you could try to argue 7 Remake, 7 Rebirth coming to the Xbox platform, right? But Yoshida himself, the guy who made fucking Final Fantasy 16, already confirmed a while ago that they're going to make an Xbox version inevitably. We, of course, did a video about this at some point on the channel, but Yoshida had said, of course, we did announce the PC version of the game, so looking towards the Xbox version, we do want to release it on Xbox. But when it comes to the specifics, such as when the game would be available and such, we're not in a position to be able to share anything. But, of course, I want to say that it's not as if there's zero hope, and we very much do want to achieve that. So players should not give up in terms of their hopes. So maybe that's not like 100% confirmation, but it's like 99% confirmation, right? Because Yoshida says, verbatim, we do want to release it on Xbox. But he does leave a tiny bit of ambiguity. So outside of like some random bullshit happening, they would prevent it for whatever reason come to Xbox. Like, that is their plans ultimately, is to eventually drop 16 on Xbox. This furthers the narrative I've been saying on the channel for years at this point, that, all the Final Fantasy games eventually comes to Xbox. So thus we circle back around to 7 Remake, 7 Rebirth eventually coming to Xbox. As for the very minor Part 3 stuff, somebody asked him, can you verify if Wukong really had a deal with PlayStation? Also, will FF7 Part 3 be PlayStation exclusive? Please say no. To which he says, I cannot verify. I assume that answer is in response to both questions about, Wukong and also Remake Part 3. Otherwise, he probably would have done a two-part answer. In terms of exclusivity, obviously nothing's for sure. But I've always thought that they probably had the exclusivity rights on PlayStation locked down for quite a long time at this point. Something I've been saying on the channel for quite some time, but there is a possibility that might not be the case, just because we did hear in an interview somewhere, I don't remember where exactly, that there was plans of them maybe doing 2 games when it came to the remake project at some point along the way. I don't know how long ago that was an idea, and I don't know exactly when behind the scenes they for sure knew that they wanted to do a trilogy. So that could maybe impact whether or not, the trilogy itself was locked down to exclusivity. But maybe back whenever they thought they were doing 2 games, maybe that's what, the exclusive rights that PlayStation got, and then eventually they decided on a trilogy. But I would assume they probably locked down exclusive rights to the entire remake project, regardless of how many games there was, right? So back in 2015, when we knew that it was going to be, PlayStation exclusive, maybe back then, it's like no matter how many games you make, it's going to come to PlayStation first. Regardless of whether or not there is going to be PlayStation exclusivity with Remake Part 3, that doesn't necessarily matter too much, because we've seen the exclusivity windows get shorter and shorter when it comes to, Final Fantasy games and PlayStation. Exclusivity windows for, 7 Remake, 16, and Rebirth have never necessarily mattered, because it's taken longer than what the window was to come to another platform. But for Remake, it's supposed to be a year, for 16, it's supposed to be 6 months, and for Rebirth, it's supposed to be 3 months. But regardless of the actual time frames it took for those games to come to other platforms, they've gotten shorter and shorter over time, right? Remake, it took like a year and 8 months to come to Epic, and then another 6 months to come to Steam. And when it came to 16, it took like a year and I think 2 months to come to PC. And then obviously with Rebirth, it took just under a year. It came out in February of last year and came to PC this year in January. Which, if that trend continues, then whatever the exclusivity window might be for Remake Part 3, it'll probably come to PC and maybe other platforms in less than 11 months. We do, of course, have Remake coming to Switch 2 at some point. We don't have a release date yet, of course, but we kind of know what to expect potentially when it comes to, the Remake games coming to PC and kind of a window of time on that. But, those games coming to other consoles is brand new territory, so we don't really know if, PC and other consoles will be, same-day type shit in the future. Who knows? As for the 9 Remake stuff, this person says, where was Final Fantasy IX Remake in regards, of course, to the Switch 2 Direct, to which Nate says, who said it would be there? Which is very true, right? We were hopeful for there to be something at the Switch 2 Direct for 9 Remake that made sense. That's a good place to announce it. Of course, a lot of eyes on that event. But there's never any, evidence saying it was going to be there. As far as I'm aware, there's no, insiders, predicting that it was going to be there, or they had inside information that it was going to be there. We were just kind of hopeful for that. But this person does follow up his tweet saying, do you have any idea when it could be shown? To which he says, not at present. I wanted to read that last bit just because I don't know if we've covered anything 9 Remake related in regards to NateTheHate. Maybe we have. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember. We do a lot of videos on the channel. But if we haven't, that'd be him, kind of confirming that it exists, right? He's saying that he doesn't know when they're going to announce it at some point. Just like any other insider out there seems to know that it exists. It's just a matter of when the fuck are they going to reveal it? What the hell's happening? Don't get me heated about some 9 Remake again. I'm trying to be chill. I'm trying to be calm. Right? But it's show us the fucking game already. Square Enix, I'm begging you. Please. We've waited long enough. Show us Final Fantasy IX Remake. But dude, that is pretty much the video, of course. We just have kind of updated information a little bit. It's just NateTheHate kind of reiterating something he said previously months ago, right? The remake's supposed to come to Xbox this year alongside 16, and Rebirth coming to Xbox next year, and then kind of sort of confirming, right, that the 9 Remake does exist. It's just nobody knows when the fuck it's supposed to be announced or revealed or talked about by Square Enix. What are they doing? For love of fucking God, show me the game. That's the video. Subscribe to you guys. A new social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.